if something is shameful, then we're not supposed to talk about it. And the fact that nobody talks about money makes it seem like, oh, then that's something shameful that we're not supposed to talk about, which then just reinforces the idea that it's shameful. So I want to loosen that up and make it something that's a normal part of our conversation.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schuessler. Today, I'm talking to my friend Tiffany McLain, a therapist consultant whose mantra is full fees are the new black. With her business HeyTiffany.com, she helps upwardly mobile clinicians in private practice overcome their shame about marketing so they can help the clients they're passionate about serving. She's been featured in Psychology Today magazine, Psych Central, Huffington Post, KGO Radio, and SF Weekly. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Annie. I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about both of your businesses, and I want to start with talking about your therapy practice.
Perfect. I'd love to talk about that.
A lot of therapists have a really hard time with choosing a niche and worry that they're going to narrow themselves down too much and that they're going to alienate people if they choose a niche. And you really have your niche nailed. It's really clear. Can you tell me a little bit about your niche of working with people living between worlds?
Yeah, and actually it's even more specific than that. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I struggled to come up with this as well. So my particular niche is underrepresented women of color in tech. So these are women who are work in technology, often upwardly mobile. Maybe didn't come from a place, maybe they're first in their family to go to college, maybe the first in their family to be making a decent amount of money or even a good amount of money, who are now in a world that maybe doesn't feel like it's set up for them.
Why'd you choose this group? How'd you come to this?
It's interesting, actually. So this was when I was thinking about niching down, particularly actually for my Hey Tiffany audience, which we'll talk about later. I was like, all right, I'm going to practice this niche thing. My practice is going well, but I want to see what it looks like to actually niche down and see what the results of that are. So one of the things that happened to me, I'm in San Francisco. For a whole year, my first year in being in private practice, not one white person called me to come to see me in private practice. So for those of you who can't see me, I'm biracial, African American and white, feel totally in both of those worlds and also totally out of both of those worlds. So for me, it felt very uncomfortable to have white folks not be calling me to see me for therapy. And I wondered, what is this about? How are people seeing me in the world? And I was frustrated about this. I felt like for the first time, kind of race relations really came to the top of my mind as it related to my private practice. And then I thought, what am I talking about? Why not just specialize in folks of color who need somewhere to go, who need to see a private practice therapist? And so I decided, where would I find women who I like to work with who are, again, upwardly mobile, maybe first generation, awkward, maybe a little, struggle with being uncomfortable or anxious. And I thought, the tech world is, all these diversity initiatives. They will be a lot of people who are first generation in the tech world, which is the people I like to work with. And these are the people who can afford my fees. So it was a kind of a marriage of these two things that are necessary to create a private practice.
Great. And how do you reach out to these folks? How do they find you?
I write for Psychology Today. That's where I have a blog called Living Between Worlds. I went to networking events, tech networking events, and I was the only therapist there when I would go, of course, because therapists often are afraid to do that kind of thing. And I got involved with the tech community to just talk about mental health and the benefits of paying attention to your mental health.
Tell us about that. Like, what kind of networking events would you go to?
Oh, and so again, in San Francisco, there are all kinds of things. Diversity in tech networking events. So where people would be coming to talk about the challenges or struggles of people of color in the tech community. I would go to those kinds of things and ask questions or raise the idea of the way mental health plays into working in technology.
When people go to your site and they're in your your niche, what do they say about what they find there?
Oh, interesting. Oh, wow. So this actually, I think it's a super important point for therapists. We're afraid that if we have a niche, then we won't get people outside of that niche anymore. And in fact, I found that wasn't true at all. Even though I was gearing my messaging towards primarily women of color in tech, men would come to me. White folks would come to me. So when people go to my site, they say that they felt, because I talk about this living between worlds thing, anybody who has felt like they don't quite fit into one particular category, they come there and they say, that spoke to me, when you talked about the struggles of navigating a world that doesn't feel like it was made for you. So that kind of messaging is what people respond to.
I noticed too on your site, you've got images of a lot of different kinds of people. And I wonder if that also has helped a lot of different people feel like, all right, I belong here too.
I'm glad you talked about that. Definitely. I picked everything on my site is geared towards this particular niche. And I do have men on there too. Mm-hmm. So I'll have people who look, maybe they have dyed hair. So maybe it's a cool, hip black chick with a shaved head and half of it's red. Or, a awkward looking black guy with black rimmed kind of hipster glasses. So again, kind of, I'm looking for images that represent maybe it's terrible to say, but a paradoxical, they defy categorization or stereotype. Those are the kind of images I chose to put on my private practice site.
Excellent. And everybody's going to see that in the show notes and go check it out.
Great.
Have you ever had any scary moments or low moments in your private practice? And
of course.
Yeah, everybody has. And how'd you get through it?
I think actually even this thing I was talking about where, I'd been in private practice for a year. As soon as I got licensed, I raised my fees to $180, which was higher than almost all of my peers. And then actually any of my friends or a lot of my supervisors, almost all of my supervisors, it was higher than all of them. So I felt confident about that. But then I had to actually learn how to attract clients who could pay $180. So again, kind of that feeling where I'm like, in the psychotherapy world, I'm particularly interested in psychoanalytic psychology. Again, it's a primarily white community. So my fear was like, do people want to come to me for mental health? And who are those people? I even had one friend who's very honest, and I appreciated this. She said, Tiffany, I could see going to you for business consultation, but I don't know that I would go to a Black woman for psychotherapy, just because I don't know that I could relate. This was what someone said, and again, I appreciated it. So it made me think like, oh no, are people going to see me with my fingerless gloves and my goofy style as someone who can actually help them outside of maybe a marketing standpoint? And I had a supervisor who really challenged me around this topic. I had this idea of the psychoanalytic community, and they don't refer to someone like me. And he said, Tiffany, who is the psychoanalytic community? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, you know who they are. And he said, no, actually, who are they? And it made me realize I was holding on to these rigid kind of ideas about who my community was, who would refer to me. And it really challenged me to kind of get over myself and get over my own anxieties and actually figure out how to do the work to attract the people that I wanted to see in my practice.
And have you found that some of your clients are new to psychoanalysis?
Actually, all of them.
Yeah.
I don't do like traditional psychoanalysis, but I do depth-oriented work that deals with the unconscious. And so all of my clients have been unfamiliar. They kind of imagine you come into therapy, you get advice, you do homework, and then you go home. And I don't do that, although I incorporate homework now because it's fun and funny, and it helps people. But, kind of introducing people into a world of the idea that their minds are complex and their psychology is complex, and this plays out in all of their relationships, really is something that some folks have to get used to and don't quite understand. And so it's really interesting and engaging to introduce people to their own minds.
Yeah, and the way that you're talking about it is really not jargony. Like the way you're talking about it, I think makes people curious, and it sounds right. It sounds like something that they can relate to.
That's right. Jargon. I think, there was Van Jones, who's this political, Van Jones. He once said something that really struck me. He came from, his father grew up poor and, he did well over time. And the father said something like, there are two kinds of smart people. There are smart people who take simple ideas and make them sound more complicated so that they can get praise and accolades for being so smart. Then he said there are another kind of smart people who take complex ideas and make them simple and digestible in order to help people. And I think that really moved me to hear, and it really resonates with what I try to do. Make things accessible so people can have access to help.
Okay, and that's one of your superpowers, Tiffany. That's really clear. And that it comes through on your website, it comes through as we're chatting. And I'm imagining it's something that you bring to did you call it the psychoanalytic community?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
psychoanalytic community.
Yeah. I'm sure you bring it there too.
I do try. And I actually moved a little bit away because I do think the desire to use an intellectual kind of language really does a disservice to each other and to the people we're trying to serve. So again, I really connect with the people who understand depth ideas or really relate to ideas of working with the unconscious, but who don't feel the need to get on a high horse about it.
Yes. Yeah, who actually want to help people with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Tiffany, what's your fee now?
Oh. Actually, so I'm moving a little. My practice is full, more or less. Just last week, I changed my voicemail to say I'm not taking on any more people, although I might take on one more. And at the same time I did that, I raised my fee to $280 on Psychology Today, on my personal website. That's the fee that I put. I just did that last week. And so we'll see how that goes. It was more like, how high can I actually push this thing? But before that, it was $200. That's what I have tended to charge up until last week. And I may or may not take on new people. But if I do, it'll be at $280.
At $280, yeah. And you don't need a new client. So that works really well to have a new fee that you're like feeling into.
Yeah.
What's it like to talk about your fee with therapists?
I love talking about my fee with therapists because that's one of the things I'm super excited about. Therapists have so much money, anxiety, and shame, and guilt, and all kinds of things. So for me, it's exciting to have that conversation. And in fact, with my own email list, I just put up, let them all know what my income was for last year, which was 2016 was my first full year in private practice. So I'm really open to talking about money. And I think it's important that we talk about money and kind of get rid of the stigma and shame around it.
Yes. What I've noticed is that the more comfortable some of us get talking about money, talking about our fees, using real numbers, then the people the therapists that we're talking to, even if they still have a lot of kind of pent up negative feelings about money, it starts to normalize. It does start to destigmatize. It starts to open up those conversations.
That's right on. I think it's even just the fear, if something is shameful, then we're not supposed to talk about it. And the fact that nobody talks about money makes it seem like, oh, then that's something shameful that we're not supposed to talk about, which then just reinforces the idea that it's shameful. So I want to loosen that up and make it something that's a normal part of our conversation.
That's interesting. One other thing, as you were just saying that, one other thing that I think can work the same way is race. Like people don't talk about race, and then that makes it seem like there's something negative going on. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
If you could time travel all the way back to when you were starting your private practice, what would you tell the Tiffany of that time?
It's interesting. I guess I don't have to time travel very long because I didn't start it too long ago. Some of the things, even if I go back to before I had my own private practice, because that's only been I'm coming upon about 2 years of being licensed. But if I go back even before that, when I would look around and hear from my professors or hear from my supervisors who would say things like, oh, literally, if you expect to make money in this field, you're in the wrong field. Or, they would kind of say, oh, it took me 10 years to build my private practice. So, kind of with the implication of you're not going to make it. And if you do, it won't be for a while. Just kind of this feeling of like, you should know your place.
Yes, you've got to pay your dues.
That's right.
You got to be as miserable as I was.
That's right. I don't want to be miserable. I didn't really, I think even at that time I was kind of thinking, I don't buy that. I had faith, and not in some religious way, but just faith in reality that things could be different for me. But I think I was afraid a lot and anxious a lot, and it was hard to find any community who was supporting me and encouraging me that it is possible actually to be very successful in private practice. So even back then I would just say, it's possible, Tiffany. If that person can do it or that person can do it, then you can do it too.
Did you find community? Did it take a while? Did you find community who did reflect that?
I eventually did, but they were not in the therapy world. I found online marketing training. Ramit Sethi is the guy who, I tell my therapist friends about it and they're like, that guy is a dick. I don't know if you can censor that out. But they thought we don't like his attitude, or but I loved his like aggressive, no nonsense, but also there was definitely empathy in there too, attitude. And so that community was one where I really felt empowered that someone like me even could make it in the business world. And then I've since brought that out of that online marketing world and into finding therapists too. It's hard though, to be honest with you. It's hard to find therapists who are willing to challenge themselves.
Absolutely. Well, you've got me.
Yes, I do have you. There are definitely a handful.
No, there
it's
are.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what this podcast is about, is like bringing those people into the clubhouse so that people everywhere can hear them and feel nurtured by them. But so tell us a little bit more about Ramit and what you've gotten out of that community and from his wisdom.
Oh, so much. He's someone who he'll even show pictures of himself back in high school, and he's like this nerdy. He's Indian. I think his parents were immigrants. I think he was born in the States. His parents were immigrants. So again, that immigration story. His parents, even though I think they were solidly middle class, they had a very clear expectation for him of what kind of business he should go into. So he was this nerdy guy, awkward, very skinny. And now you can see how he's worked. He's just worked strategically on himself, his business, his own way of being in the world. And now he's this muscular, well-spoken, deep voice. And if you go back and hear him back then, he had like a high-pitched voice. So there's something about his willingness to really push himself to grow, but also to show unabashedly where he came from. He didn't. He debunks the myth of magically making it somewhere. He talks about it in a very clear, strategic way. Which I really appreciated. And it really gave me the sense of like, oh, I can see that it's a journey. He also talks a lot about his struggles, his first time trying to sell something, how much it had an impact on his self-esteem, how he was worried, how even if, tons of people bought his first product, which is an online book, an ebook, even like if he got 3 or 4 negative comments, how much that crushed him. And it said it took him about 3 more years before he was able to go back out there and try again. So even just hearing his very real struggle with making it, or fears of rejection, I really appreciate how honest he is about all of that. He makes it transparent.
And you've turned me on to him, and I've listened to a lot of his stuff. One thing that's great about him is he talks about anything that you put out there should be really high quality.
Yes.
So this isn't like a smoke and mirrors kind of thing and like, put crap out there and make a ton of money. It's about creating something and taking as much time as you need to create something really awesome that's going to help people a lot. So in a lot of ways, I think it's actually a really good fit for therapists, but it probably needs to be translated through someone like you for therapists to get it.
I agree. I think a lot of therapists need a lot of holding around their feelings, and Ramit is not particularly interested in providing a lot of holding around feelings.
Yeah, so that's your job.
I'll have to say this other thing too. I had been looking around a little bit. There had been some other people I've been following who I really respect. Pat Flynn, Marie Forleo, Amy Porterfield. And so I was thinking maybe I'll take a course. And with Ramit products, I think I heard about him. And within 2 weeks, I invested $2,000, which I had never invested that much money before in one go, in his course. And I really valued, again, the way he sold in his emails. His point is, I'm going to give you all kinds of free stuff. But when I create a product, I know that it's quality, just like you're saying, and I know that it can help you. It can't help everybody, but if it resonates with you, then it can help you, and it's my responsibility to sell so hard and to remove all the obstacles for you to buy so that your life can improve. That spoke to me because it also took away this shame around marketing. He said, I'm marketing to you right now, and I'm marketing hard because I believe in my product. And in fact, his product has worked for me. His course, I get coaching through his product programs, and it's made it's been a game changer in terms of not only my business, but also my personal life.
So Tiffany, when did you realize that you wanted to start your second business?
Good question. I think I always knew that's not true. Maybe when I started grad school, I had the fantasy that I would get out of grad school. I knew I wanted to be in private practice even going into grad school. So I had the fantasy that I would come out, see 30 hours of clients a week, and that would be my life. And it very quickly became clear to me that was too many people for me to see, especially given the depth of the work and how much personally goes into it for me psychically. I realized that my capacity for seeing people was limited. I also realized that there was also an income limit to doing one-to-one work in private practice. I had big dreams about what I wanted to accomplish, and I wanted more flexibility in my life than what a private practice alone could provide. So very quickly I realized, okay, there's something else I want to do along with private practice. What that thing is, I don't know. Throughout grad school and then the internship years afterwards, I was constantly talking with therapists about marketing and business and money. It was something I was very excited about for myself. I would get into arguments with my peers about it or get excited. I just felt so excited talking to them about it. When I signed up for Ramit's course, I actually did not think I want to be a therapist marketing person initially, and I'm still ambivalent about it sometimes. I did know that I was passionate about helping folks from a community that I came from, a small town. I had a very conservative religious background, so some kind of really limited thinking sometimes about what's possible for people.
You're from a small town?
Yeah.
Ah,
you didn't know?
No, I did not.
Oh yeah, super small military town. We finally got a mall, I think, in 1990, so just like a tiny town. And so, that is where my heart is, primarily white town. There weren't really people of color anywhere around me. My dad and then all my siblings are white. My mom is white. So I had a feeling of, I could see around me kind of this stuckness in the community, a lot of poverty. The neighbors across me growing up, they raised pigs, like a really rural town. And I feel like it was hard to even imagine that change was possible. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I wanted to create a business that spoke to people like that, who I grew up with, who I have inside of me, and help them know that it is possible to change. You can have access to a different kind of life. And so eventually I came back around, and I was surrounded by therapists anyway. I'd been talking about marketing anyway. I said, all right, I'll start here, see where it can go, and move on from there.
So Tiffany, your mantra is full fees are the new black. Did you always feel that way, or was that something that you struggled with?
That's a good question also. How did I act? That's a great question. At what point did I start thinking about that? I am a believer in having a sliding scale, giving back to your community. Maybe. The same supervisor who challenged me when I was talking about the psychoanalytic community, he also was really a strong proponent of, he said, we as therapists are kind of trained up in the idea that we have to give back via our businesses, our private practice. And he said, you don't expect other business owners to give back as a business model. He said, he really challenged us to think about our businesses as our businesses and find other ways to give back that are not reliant upon our bread and butter, what we're doing as our profession. And that really made a big impact on me. Kind of this idea that I could charge full fees, I can have a private practice where I'm making the income I need to live, reality-based, and not only live, but enjoy myself and do my community service outside of my business. So I think kind of starting to hear him talk in that way, seeing so many therapists around me who were taking a sliding scale, but not because they did it out of the goodness of their heart, but they did it out of desperation. And they use kind of this idea of like, I'm giving back, that's why. But really the fact is they were afraid to charge high fees, and then they were also afraid to do the thing one has to do in order to attract full fee clients. And so I wanted to kind of call out this myth of the noble therapist who's lowering their fee in order to give back, because that was a fantasy. The fact was they were afraid, and they were kind of putting it in this high horse manner or this moralistic term, and not actually acknowledging that the real reason they did it was because they were afraid to do otherwise. So I don't know where kind of in my own journey I decided, like, wait a minute, full fees, that's the important thing. But I guess it really started, I really honed in on it in 2015, January or February. I actually wrote an article called The Top 10 Myths Therapists Have About Setting Fees. And that's, I think, when I started really focusing in on all these myths we have around fee setting.
Yeah. At this dichotomy between giving back or having full fees, and it's really bullshit. Karen, our friend Karen Smiley was just talking about this on this podcast, about how having a full fee and not sliding especially when you're beginning to work with someone, also gives you the ability that if something happens to one of your clients, they lose their job for a while, they get really sick, that then it gives you the ability to lower your fee because it feels right, not because you're desperate and trying to build your business. That's
absolutely right.
What's going on with Hey Tiffany right now?
All kinds of things. It's so exciting. That's actually where a lot of my creative energy goes. I have kind of having the psychoanalytic background, although this is also loosening a bit, but I don't bring a lot of my goofiness into the therapy itself with my private practice clients. I really do my best to leave a lot of space for them. And so Hey Tiffany gives a place where I can actually bring, I feel like, much more of myself, my goofy self, my funny self, and also my own life experience to help clinicians. And so I am currently in the process of putting together an event with Allison Puryear. We're doing an event in San Francisco, a 2-day live event followed by a 6-month mastermind group for therapists who are decent, have a good private practice or feeling full in their private practice and want to take their practice to the next level. That's super exciting. It's my first live event, and we offered it only to 12 people, and thus far we have 11 spots filled. So it's also mind-blowing to actually have a high-priced event and to actually have that fill up so quickly. Also, again, kind of busts my own fantasies busts through my own internal ideas about limits on income or what's possible for me. So that's one thing I'm doing. It's really exciting.
What is the fee for that? What's the investment?
$3,500.
Nice.
And then we had our early bird price for people who we talked to initially when we were wondering about the idea. And so this is something also that I think is really important for therapists. We get excited about what we want to do, and then we go create something around it, which is a huge problem. What we did and what I recommend for anyone, if you're exploring a niche or if you're wanting to put together an event, is go out and talk to people who are in your market or who you are excited about working with, and actually find out what they want, not what you want, and then build something around them. So the folks who we talked to initially to float the idea, see if it'd be something they were interested in, we offered it to them for $3,000, and then for people outside of that, $3,500.
Great. So you built it for particular people. I think that's
absolutely
such the key.
Yes,
yeah, it's heartbreaking when you see someone build and put a ton of energy and maybe even a ton of money and time into an offer, and then it's not the right offer. It's not for particular people.
That's right.
By the time this airs, you're probably going to have done this or it's going to be full, but you might do this again. Is that right?
Yes, if it goes well, which I imagine it will. Allison and I are having so much fun putting it together. We're excited about the possibility of offering it in an ongoing way. So I'm guessing it'll be offered again.
Hey, will you join me for a listener question?
Yes.
Listener question.
So this is from Kay. My question is about networking. We all know networking is important, but on a more subtle level, I've found it difficult to find like-minded colleagues to network with. How do we find our professional tribe? I don't mean to sound elitist, but the reality is basic networking tends to connect me to colleagues that I don't feel a kinship with or who don't have the kinds of businesses or the business acumen I aspire to. Thanks for not judging me about this.
So a couple of times with Kay's question, I was surprised and curious about even his own worries about sounding elite or us judging him. The idea that he wants to find a particular tribe of people and he's worried that he's going to get judgment about it says a lot, maybe about him, but also maybe about the therapist community itself. I don't know.
Yeah, like that he doesn't feel entitled to kind of get himself around the people that will feel like his tribe.
Yeah, it makes me think. So with a lot of my money mindset stuff I'm working on, I'm putting together a course right now about money mindset obstacles. One of the things that surprised me when talking with people about this was their identification with poverty, a poverty mindset. And it makes me wonder about the potential that Kay, I don't know what his upbringing was like, but if he's actually wanting to move beyond or kind of grow himself, there's maybe some worry that he's going to be attacked by the people he's maybe associated with up until this point, or the idea that people are going to say, who do you think you are to want to grow your practice?
Yeah, so then I'm thinking probably Kay, the more that you kind of speak honestly when you're talking to your colleagues, the more you're going to attract the people who can relate to what you're saying. Whether they agree with you about everything or not, they're going to be able to relate to you. And I think if you hide part of yourself, it's really hard to find your tribe, because then the people who would relate to you kind of don't recognize you as being in their tribe.
I really like that point, and I like this idea of just speaking up honestly. And you're going to maybe get a lot of haters, which is actually kind of cool, because that means they're taking a stand. But the people who connect with you are going to really connect with you, and you guys will grow together.
Yeah. And yeah, reach out when you're at a networking event, be yourself, be honest, and then start putting feelers out for like what's maybe a consultation group that you could build, starting even with one person who feels like they're in your tribe, and then reach out, see who they relate to, go from there.
It also makes me think about even this idea of networking, that we therapists often are networking with each other and talking about the importance of networking with each other, which I actually don't buy into at all. I think we often network with other therapists as a way to avoid marketing to our target demographic, which is the harder thing, going to the places where the people we want to work with are and engaging with them, finding out who the experts are in their field and connecting with them. So I might say to Kay, network with your therapist, go to courses, learn more about psychology and, become a better clinician. But those are not the places to go necessarily to become a better business person.
Beautiful. Yeah. That you may find those people with the business acumen that you're looking for in completely different fields.
Yeah. I think so.
Yes. Well, and look at that. You and I have, right? Like we have found the people who push us in terms of business, not always in the therapy field.
That's right. And I love that you're doing this therapist clubhouse, because in fact, you're putting together a whole bunch of people who are therapists or clinicians who are also building their businesses. I think, Kay might think his circle of people who he can network with are the people he knows personally. And I encourage you to actually look online, read books, find articles, and then reach out to the people who you're listening to and admire, even if they feel like they're too far or out of reach. It's worth a shot to connect with people.
Yes, even if you're reaching out to like 10 people and you get like 5 or even 9 rejections.
Yeah, that one is going to be a huge win for you.
Tiffany, where can people find you and throw compliments at you?
Oh, they can throw compliments. I'm shy, but you can go to www.heytiffany.com and you can check out my marketing stuff for therapists. And then you can also email me anytime, Tiffany@heytiffany.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure.
Today's snark moment is about headshots. So I meet therapists with these amazing personalities and superpowers, and then sometimes I see their headshots and they're super boring. So if you've got a headshot that's kind of 80s style, maybe looks like a yearbook photo, is clearly low budget, or doesn't show your personality or your great sense of style, please get a new photo. This is not the place to skimp. This is the place to pay what you need to pay to get a great photo. It's going to be the single biggest factor in whether somebody stays on your site, checks you out further, or feels like, I don't think I can relate to this person. You're awesome, and your photo should be awesome too. If you need a little inspiration to figure out, what could make an awesome photo, look at the website portraitstothepeople.com, and you'll see some examples of some good photos. You may not be in their area. You can, hire whatever photographer you think is really talented and great at capturing you, but don't fool yourself and think that your friend who's good at taking pictures can get an awesome picture of you, unless that's really true. This is the place to invest and make it a priority. Thank you so much for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Hey, will you do me a big favor? You knew I was going to ask you to do this eventually, didn't you? Would you please go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review? It'll help other therapists find the Clubhouse, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. All right, so your mantra is full fleas. All right, let's start that over.
That's actually, speaking of my own.
That's a good one.